Hi, everybody. This is Tracy. Today I have a very special guest. You've met her before if you've been on my channel. Her name is Suzanna Quintana, and she has just written a book. And it's called You're Still That Girl, How the Little Girl That Used to Help You, How the Girl You Used to Be Will Help You Get Over Your Abuse for Good. Today we're going to talk about her because she's done so much work to help people heal. So if you're one of those people who are stuck in the painful and terrible stage at the very beginning, or maybe you're further along in your recovery and you're just wondering why you can't shake it, why you're still having triggers, why you can't get off the couch, then listen to this video, because at the end, Suzanna is going to give you the book for free. So let's, without any further ado, welcome Suzanna. Thank you so much for joining me, Suzanna.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back with you.
Yeah, I would love it if you could start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do to help and support this community.
Okay. Well, I've been a writer for a long time, but actually it was not until I escaped an abusive relationship with a diagnosed narcissist that I found my voice again and began to write about my story. And I've been on a healing and recovery journey for about 5 years now, but I'm in a great place now. I consider myself a survivor and a thriver of narcissistic abuse, and now I'm just paying it forward to those still at the beginning of the journey to help them claim their space in the light and leave the darkness behind.
Well, and you coach people.
I do. I coach women who are in the recovery and healing process so that they can not only fully heal and emotionally detach from their abusive ex, but also so that they can be sure that they'll never make the same mistakes again with another person.
And that is the biggest concern for everybody, especially knowing that we didn't know, and how will we not get caught back up in something like that. So we're here to talk about your book, which is You're Still That Girl, How the Girl You Used to Be Will Help You Get Over Your Abusive Ex for Good.
Yeah.
Want to tell us about the book a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, the reason that I came up with that title, You're Still That Girl, is because so often women, when we come out of the abusive relationship, especially with a narcissist, right? Because we don't know which way is up when we get out of those. Often I remember I would look in the mirror, especially even the last few years of my marriage, and then starting into the healing process, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me, right? We lose ourselves because the narcissist deliberately and purposefully tries to break us down, break our spirit down, break our emotional state down, right? So we're just a puddle and a mess, and we have no self-worth, and we blame ourselves for everything, right? We have a lot of shame and guilt. So it's crucial to get back in touch with the girl that you used to be before all the abuse. You can call it your gut instinct or your intuition, but basically when we're in these abusive relationships, we put that girl, we silence her, we don't listen to her anymore, right? So it's really important. So she's the key to helping us get back in touch with not only who we used to be, but now we have to establish a new normal, right, for ourselves after what we've been through, because trauma changes us. So why not be changed for the better? And we need our past to help us remember how awesome we are and all those great qualities about us before the narcissist ripped us to shreds.
So how does someone find that little girl or that person we used to be? How do they find that? Because that's the biggest challenge for people. When I have them in my support group and coaching them, it's like, I don't know who I am. How do I find that? Because I don't even know where to begin looking.
Yeah, well, it's a process, right? Healing in itself is a process. But one of the things that, when I work with women on their journey, one of the things that is essential right at the beginning on your journey is that you really have to get honest and authentic with yourself. Now, this is tough when we're victims of abuse, because we never deserved what happened to us, right? We don't deserve the abuse, but it's crucial that we look back, because we need to get a sense of why did we find ourselves in these positions, right? And that girl that we used to be has those answers. So if we look back, and for everybody, for every woman, it's a different age. It could have been like when you were 5 years old. It could have been when you're, a teenager, or even in your 20s, before the abuse started. But going back to that time where you remember feeling empowered, you remember feeling in control, you remember feeling great about yourself. Usually it's when we're little girls, before the world puts its stamp on us, right? And says, no, you're a girl. You need to be quiet. You need to be nice. You can't be angry, right? All these labels that they stick on us. So just going on that journey and doing a lot of self-reflection, which isn't easy because we have to be really honest with ourselves. Like, my journey involved me going back to my relationship with my father, right? And having to look at why I was attracted to these type of men, for example, why I thought so little of myself to get involved in the beginning with these. Now, again, this is not mean we deserve it in any way, but it's crucial that we uncover those truths about ourselves so that we will never make the same mistake again. Nowadays I can spot crazy coming from a mile away.
And that's a good thing. I think I want to manufacture narc glasses,
Right.
like little dials on them. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
no, you're not. I can see through the rose color now and see this.
Yeah.
But finding yourself, I know I've done a lot of outer child, inner child work, and it is listening to that voice. When you find that and you tap into it, it's actually trusting that voice, because
Right.
our recordings override what the little girl is trying to tell us. And she might be trying to protect us. She might be trying to make us see something that we're kind of blind to. But it's listening. That's the hardest part for people, to kind of like, okay, I can get in touch with it, but I'm not going to listen to her because she was 12,
Right. And especially when we're being love bombed, right? I remember what would have been red flags, right? For a normal person. I remember, now that I look back, I remember those red flags. And I remember the girl within, or your intuition, gut instinct, your Jiminy Cricket, your conscience, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, she was just like screaming, like, no, run. This isn't, something's wrong with this picture. But I remember thinking at the time, because a narcissist has a way of just overwhelming you with love and adoration and praise and passion and all of that, that you're dizzy, right? And so I remember making a deliberate choice of, I'm not going to listen to that girl, because look at this great thing that I found, right? So, and these aren't matching. These don't go together. My great new guy is not, that girl doesn't like him. So I had to get rid of one of them. So I got rid of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's important. It's important to see that and actually analyze it. When we do the work, we go back in time and we're looking at, again, you looked at your father relationship. I looked at my mother relationship. We're looking at the patterns that we had and what we believed in those days.
And without blame, right? We can't attach blame or shame to, because as women in general, we're taught that as soon as we start speaking our mind, right? Or as soon as we start what's viewed as pointing fingers, which is not pointing fingers, it's just examining the facts or stating the facts, right? But as women, we're usually taught that that's not something we don't want to play that game of blaming and shaming, right? But the fact is that we have every right to look back on, on our parents or on ourselves, but we have to do that without blaming anybody who we're looking at, right? Because we want to undergo a journey of self-reflection that's sort of scientific or mathematical. And what I mean by that is we need to pull out the judgment and the blame and shame, no matter what direction it's going, whether in ourselves or it's somebody else, because it doesn't serve us in the healing journey. So I could look back at my father, for example, who was abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. And I could look back and spend my time saying, oh my God, he's a horrible person. This is all his fault, blah, 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 blah. Now, those things might be true, but I'm just wasting my time, and I'm kind of going into a state of victimhood there, right? And I'm wasting my energy on that. Instead of just looking at the facts, scientifically and just stating, this is the behavior that I witnessed, this is the behavior that I modeled, right? And when I did that, it was like, and I did it with both my parents, right? And so when I did that, then it was like, no wonder, and that girl already knows that, right? So it was no wonder that I found myself in the relationships that I did. It was like, duh, yeah, that's why that happened. That's why I picked those men, because of this is what happened. This is how I was conditioned to think in the past.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know if it's like our generation or just the time. Like our parents were raised a certain way, and so therefore they instilled what they knew on our generation. And it just seems like between the narcissists that are on the dark side and the victims that are on the, people pleasing, I'm going to make everyone happy side,
Yeah.
these are patterns, and these are patterns that are inherited from generation to generation. And,
Right.
and the important thing for people to understand is, while we can sit here and try to recover and learn everything we need to do, we need to break this pattern. We need to help our children, because if we don't, they're going to model their behavior and their relationships,
Right.
what they've experienced, what they saw.
Absolutely.
So how does someone like actually recover from this? And why don't people recover faster? Why don't they just move on? Like, I mean, this seems
Right.
to be such a big thing. And I had no idea about it, obviously, till I learned. But it's a long, lengthy process. And I know people are just like, they want the fix. They're like, give me the drug. I want to be done. I want to go into like a Betty Ford clinic and be better tomorrow.
Right.
It's not. It's a long process, right?
It is a long process, and if you're not going to do the work, that's why women, especially, we tend to jump right back into other relationships, because we're hurting so badly that we don't want to face the pain, and we don't want to face the past, right? We just sort of, and I was guilty of this too when I first left, right? Because the pain was so intense that it makes sense that we want to make it go away. Right. So what do you do in that state where you're just not ready to go there, right? To go through it, to go deep into it. And that's why women return to their abuser an average of 7 times, because of that reason, because we get to a point where we just miss them so much, and we're so lonely, and we don't think we can make it on our own. Right. And we're hurting so much that we figure, well, I'll go back. I mean, it was comfortable, even though I was miserable, but at least, I knew what to expect, and I wasn't lonely per se, even though you are lonely. Or you jump right into other relationships because maybe another guy comes in and he's like telling you everything you want to hear, and you're just going to start the game all over again without doing that work on yourself. So the key is, if you want to come to a point where you're emotionally detached from your past, so that, like me, I can look on any part of my past and I'm not pulled back into it, right? So that's the crucial thing, is that you want to be able to look at your past, understand your past, why you did the same things, the things that you did, to avoid you from making mistakes in the future. But as far as your point, as why can't you just move on, right? Why isn't it that easy? So that's like going to somebody who, just lost their house after a Category 5 hurricane, right? Their whole entire life it's decimated within a couple of hours, right? And they go and they're standing there at the rubble. They've lost everything. So can you imagine if someone just came up to them right in that moment and said, why don't you just move on? It's like, okay, well, let's take a little time here. It takes a little time to move on, because especially the longer you've been in the abusive relationship, there's a sort of undoing of who you are. So you have to start from point A. You can't just jump to point Z. You can't just blink your eyes and there your house is again after a hurricane, right? So it's the same thing.
And as far as like length of time, we both know the fact the 7 times they go back to their abusers. We know that fact, but everyone wants to know, how long does this take? And again, I know I want to call it every prescription is different, because some people might have to work on abandonment, father issues, mother issues, codependency.
Right.
There's a different like formula for every person based on what they experience. But
Yeah.
what kind of time limit? I mean, what's realistic for people to think about?
You know, I think I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you say, I have to know how much time this is going to take, and and the reason you're setting up for failure is already there's some sort of blame that you're, because what if you're not totally healed by the time, then you're going to start that blame and shame game all over again. So this is no different than a rebirth. Basically, it's not pretty. Birth is not pretty, right? We think that you are having a birth and then there's just this beautiful baby, and it's like everybody forgets about that really awful, ugly part of the birthing process, right? So what's important is that you're coming from this darkness, right? And you want to get to the light. There's this in between spot. There's this like what I call sort of your cocoon, especially, and if you have children too, you're going to take those children in that cocoon with you, where you're going to go through the pain and you're going to go through the process of healing and whatever that looks like. And to the point where, when you're finally ready to come out, you'll know. When you're finally ready to, come out of that cocoon with your children, and you'll know. But to try to put a timeline on it, I think is just adding more blame and shame to your circumstance.
And disappointment, if you say, oh, I'm going to be better in 6 months, and you haven't explored all the wounds. I mean, that's the important thing, is that there's so many different wounds. And I know that the people that come to my YouTube channel are in all different stages. They're fresh out of the oven. Oh my God, deer in the headlights, just learned about this.
Yeah.
And then people that are further along the line. I went through a horrific divorce, again, not knowing it was a narcissist until several years later, but I got into a relationship within 6 months, and that was an abuser. That was the worst abuser, right?
Yeah.
I didn't give myself enough time. And I've heard the number thrown around that like 2 years is not unreasonable, because you need to reestablish your friendships and your trust. And if you jump into something too quickly, then we risk getting sucked up by another abuser.
Yeah.
We're not quite healed, and they can identify what our vulnerabilities are, and it's dangerous.
Right. And also, we're not, like you pointed out, we're not just leaving the relationship, right, and moving to a deserted island to heal. We're still dealing, especially if we have children with our abuser or with the narcissist, then you've got to go through the divorce process while you're trying to heal. Then you have to deal with, sharing custody, for example, through that. So it's not like you're just all on your own, totally isolated and healing and recovery. Otherwise it would go like that. Right. And then you also have the addition, what's different nowadays from back in my day, back in before the internet, right? You could just go, if you needed to heal, you could literally disappear from public view, right? You could, and you wouldn't have to know anything about your ex if you didn't want to. You would just go in your house, you'd stop going out socially for a while or whatever. You just rely on your girlfriends and some, bottles of wine, and just hole up in your house, right? But nowadays with the internet, we have that distraction as well, right? Because there's that temptation of, well, what's he doing? Or why did he move on so fast? Or checking up on him, or maybe you're even being stalked. That was my experience, right? That I couldn't even literally get away from him after I had left him because he was stalking me and following me. So that's another reason why the healing process is this, is a lengthy journey, because you're not just, you're healing and recovering while you're having to deal with all these things. So it's not like a linear process, like you just go from A to Z. It's like a roller coaster, right? Where sometimes you're like dizzy and you're like, am I even going forward?
Yeah. It's like a washing machine, because it just keeps going around and around, and you're just like, wait, I was better. And now you're walking in the cloud again, and you're just like, how did that happen? And one tiny little trigger, or, one text from your ex can put you back there. So how they know they're healed is when that text doesn't bother you anymore.
Absolutely. And that's the part of the healing process, is that's where that girl can help you, is because and that's what I talk about in my book, is those step-by-step things that when those triggers come up, right? And they will. When you are tempted to look at his Facebook profile, or when when you do hear from him and it makes your stomach turn, or you have a flashback or anything like that, that's what I detail step by step, is what to do in those moments and how that girl can help you get through that. And you get, as you're going, it's just like building up to run a marathon or something. You've got to train, you've got to get yourself ready. It's when you first come out of the abusive relationship, you're depleted, right? So you don't have any self-worth or self-esteem left. So all those things, you want to start building up in yourself again. And that's where that girl can help you, so that you do know when you're healed, when you can sit back, like where I am today. I'm not emotionally attached. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't happen, and sometimes it pisses me off, but I'm not sucked back into that darkness, right? To where my whole day is affected, or where it stops me in my forward movement in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. And those are the tools that they're going to learn in your book, right?
Yeah.
That's good. I know that one of the things that, let's just picture them going through this whole, production of healing. But then the question always becomes, like, how do we know that this is real love versus fake love, some narcissistic fakeness? How does someone know the difference? Because that will be, again, if they can identify that, then they know they're healed. If they are just blind to it and they haven't asked that question, then they are going to get scooped up by another narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of my journey. And again, that's why women return so often to their abusers, right? Because we are still under the illusion of what love was, right? When it wasn't love, it was abuse disguised as love, right? So particularly with narcissists who do not love, right? You are there to serve their needs, to fill their supply, whatever they need, they suck from you, right? Until there's nothing left of you. And then they discard you because you have nothing to give them anymore. So part of the healing process is that, and this is one of the hardest parts of healing and recovering. And I totally get it. I did it once. I returned once to my abuser. So I totally get it, because it's really difficult to look back. Like, I had to look back on 16 years, with somebody I had children with, and somebody I had built a life with, and I thought a future with. And I had to recognize that was not love, right? That was abuse on his part. And on my part, though it was love, I loved an illusion, you see? So, and that's a really, really hard realization to come to, is that you have to look back. And one of the first things that I hear women say that is really dangerous territory is when we start making excuses and say, well, but there were so many good times, right? Besides the bad times, right? But we want to focus, but those good times, right? When he was nice and he did this for me and he was charming and he was great. And it's like, but that was not all the time, right? So, so that's part of the illusion, is that looking back, and again, this is where that girl can help you, because start asking yourself, which I had to ask myself some tough questions, like, why was I so starving especially by the end of it, and narcissists are masters at this, why was I so desperate and starving at the end and thought so little of myself that when he was nice to me 20% of the time, and toward the end, narcissists get worse and worse as the years go by, right? Their cruelty just, in the beginning, you see just a little tiny bit of they're very Jekyll and Hyde, right? So you see just a little tiny bit of the bad guy, just a tiny bit, but those are little red flags and you just ignore them, because most of it, they're just great and charming and whatever else, and awesome, and the man of your dreams, right? But by the end of it, as you're going on, then more of the bad guy comes out, right? And less of the good guy. And the reason that they are good toward the end is because they have a purpose, right? They want to reel you back in. They want to keep you from leaving them. They need something from you, whatever. So then they pour it on again. But inevitably, it goes back to them being cruel and treating you, like crap. And so looking at that illusion and saying, okay, why did I think so little of myself that him being nice to me part of the time was sufficient, right? But being with a narcissist, you get addicted. It's no different than drugs, where you get totally addicted, and to the point where when that you're so desperate, you're so hungry, right, that when they toss breadcrumbs your way, you'll take them and you'll be happy. You're like, oh my God, I got breadcrumbs, I'm so happy. Right. Yeah.
The bar gets so lowered, and there was a woman in my domestic violence class that I had to go to, who had just gotten out of jail, and so it was her first meeting. We hadn't met her before, and she just said that the bar just kept getting lower and lower, to the point where, again, it's not like jumping from wonderful to shitty. There's
Right.
a fine line between every little stage where they'll test it. They'll give us less attention. They'll give us less of what we need.
Right.
They'll lower it to be, all right, well, that was 75%. Okay, I guess the rest of it makes up for it, and then down a little more, until the bar is so low that you are tripping on it. And so
absolutely,
one of the things to understand that, we blame ourselves for, how could we not know? Well, it wasn't like that. It was very much controlled by them. And if we reacted where we were not happy with what they were doing, the love bombing dial, it was like, oh, so that we went too far there. Let's go back and balance it out. And then you're like, okay, he's back. He's apologized. It's all good. But when we accept that lowering of the bar, we have to realize this. We have to look back at those memories and analyze. And to me, it's always coming to me. Memories are just shooting into my mind at no time. And I've been
because that's that fog, right? You're coming out of the fog. And so it's no different. Like, I remember it was very visual for me, because I'm like, memories would come to me. And I'm like, wait, did that really happen? Wait, that did happen. Did I forget that? Did I purposely block that out? Or it's just because you're just pushing the fog out of the way, right? You're like, I can't see anything. And then you start seeing a little bit, and then you start seeing a lot, right?
And that's what the healing process is. It's having the time to look and analyze at memories and things that happen. It's having time to understand that this is, what's going on.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So, I mean, that's all. The biggest part is to really give yourself that time to understand. Now, I know that you are launching your book soon, and did I hear that we have an offer for the people who are watching?
Yes, I would love to. Well, I love you and everything that you do, and I just think you are amazing. I don't even know how long ago that was that we found each other, that I found you the first time. Your site, everything that you do is just amazing. So I wanted to offer anybody who's watching, doesn't matter if you watch it now or later, whenever, free copies of my book. So all you have to do is you can visit me. I don't know if you can give my Facebook page link.
We'll put it on the bottom,
Yep. So they can just go, if they're on Facebook, they can go to my Facebook page and just send me a private message on Facebook. You can also send me a friend request, because my page is public, and I have an amazing community of women survivors and thrivers, and women who are just at the beginning of their journey, all coming together and helping each other out. If for some reason you're not on Facebook at all, just send me an email at support@SuzannaQuintana.com. And I'd love to put you on the list for a free copy.
Awesome. That's such a nice thing for you. I'm so excited. I know that so many people have been financially abused, and you and I are kind of experts, sadly, on that.
Yes.
But, just even getting, $10 together to find a book stops people from healing. And I really appreciate that you are giving of yourself to do that. And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being here today. This has been great. And I hope that you all have found something that is a little kibble, and that you are excited to get Suzanna's book, because I know already it's going to be great. She's an awesome writer. She's been doing this a long time. And the more people we find like her that are out there, and they're warriors. We're all warriors. Once we get out of the victim, we give back. And that's the power that I love about this community. So thank you so much for joining me today. And we'll send everybody your way to get your book.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.